Have you ever heard of the 80-20 rule, otherwise known as the Pareto principle? Basically, it states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. You'll see this in many different areas of life, in nature, in business, etc. Even in your diet, for example. Like if you cut out 20% of your diet, which might be like carbs and sugar, you could end up losing a lot of weight. That was my experience. You also see this in computer science or engineering, where if you address the 20% of your most reported bugs or problems, you can generally address 80% of the problems. I also found this works in a variety of different ways in my business, and I've kind of used it as somewhat of a guiding principle to help me decide on what products we offer, what companies we work with, which strategies we take as far as marketing or employees, etc. And I found it to be really helpful. But today I wanted to speak specifically about our product lineup and this decision that we've made to work exclusively with Bosch. Now, most would say at this time during the pandemic, when everybody knows that there's a huge bike shortage, why would I want to limit the amount of products that I'm able to offer in my store? That might in some way limit my ability to grow and to make a profit, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that it's really more important to think more long term. Eventually, this bike shortage will go away, and I don't want to put products out there into the market that we're going to have challenges supporting long term, or maybe have challenges supporting just in the short term. It's really important that everything that we do put out in the market, it lasts, and that we're able to support it, that we're able to be supported by those manufacturers, and then we know that they're also sharing the same vision of a long-term supported product in the market. I find that Bosch does that, but quite frankly, I find that most other companies don't do that well. And I don't think they do this intentionally. I think ultimately they're thinking a little bit too short-term, and this is probably something that's somewhat natural to companies. They have to think of what's their profit going to be this quarter, or that sort of thing. But if you can think a little bit further ahead and you think that, well, you know what, overall customer satisfaction and safety and these sort of more long-term strategies will help to grow the product overall. Now, I don't want this to be like a marketing video or whatever. I just wanted to kind of explain this because to a lot of people it's a bit troubling. We started in 2011, nearly 10 years ago at this point. At that time, there was very few products on the market. Now, I'm here in the US, and actually, oddly enough, Bosch started in 2011, but they weren't available in the US when we first started. They came around 2014. Those first couple of years, we worked with all different companies. Some of those companies are no longer here today. That can create a big challenge in the market, and that's something that I'm acutely aware of. All the companies that are around today that likely won't be around tomorrow. And how do you support them? I actually made a video about this long-term support idea. This is a really important topic that a lot of people don't really think about when they're going to purchase an electric bike for the first time. Most electric bikes, they're fun to ride, and it's an exciting experience. And naturally, it's just like, it's easy to get caught up in all that hype. But when you peel back the curtain, when you really look behind the scenes and you start to understand what's going on there, it's a little bit deeper than that. There's a lot of these points that other companies, I feel like, don't really look at. They try to focus more on like marketing speak of like, this one has this many watts, or it can go this many miles, or this and that. But really, the points that I feel like are really important is like, how safe is the product? The reality is there's no testing standards in the US market for electric bikes currently. Now, I don't want to like blow up the industry or anything, but like, are they really safe? I don't know. Bosch systems are tested. They do this voluntarily. They use a system called UL, it's Underwriting Laboratories, and basically they go through these variety of tests to ensure that the products that they're offering are safe. They're safe from fire, they can handle all different weather conditions, drop tests, all that sort of stuff. And it's pretty amazing. But the challenge is, it's very expensive and it's very complicated to complete this procedure. Some would argue that's overkill, that's not necessary, we're just trying to have fun. And I get that. But if we're thinking about this long term and where is this market going, and if we want to professionalize this market, I think we have to think a little bit further than that. Because, all we need is people to get hurt or there to be fires, and then electric bikes suddenly are not so cool. And that responsibility is another detail I think that it's not necessarily thought about so much, about the responsibility of putting a product into the world and actually supporting it long term, so it doesn't end up in a landfill or something when it stops working. I think that it's kind of interesting when you think about it. It's like green technology, but then a lot of these products, if they stop working, there's kind of this expectation that they're like a throwaway product. I don't really like that. Especially if you're going to spend a decent amount of money on something, you should be able to support it long term. And I really appreciate that Bosch kind of thinks about this. I mean, they take some of this experience from the automotive industry where there's actually some requirements on supporting things long term. Technically, there's requirements in the US also, but I don't think anybody's looking at that too deeply. But what they state publicly is that they'll support a product for at least 7 years after they stop manufacturing on it. My experience with many other big companies is sometimes they have trouble supporting the product when it's still currently being manufactured. That's really troubling to me. Like, how am I supposed to maintain a good relationship with the customer if I can't support them? Getting back to that 80-20 rule, what I found was that it was like 20% of our products were causing 80% of the problems. 80% of the bikes that were stuck in service were from 20% of these brands. So I said, I'm just cutting them out. I'm not doing it. From our experience, like, we're able to work on just like improving the business from there and just improving the experience for the customer as opposed to just like figuring out how to fix all these bikes. Now, I'm not saying that our bikes are perfect and they're never going to have issues. That's not anybody's reality. But the reality for us is that we can support them. I have confidence that we're going to be able to support them long term. And 10, 15 plus years from now, I feel pretty confident I'm going to be able to continue to support them. And that's important to me. I want to be able to leave a good legacy behind. Could I make faster money by selling cheaper products with less safety standards? Probably. But that's not the type of business that I want to be in. That's not really the type of business most people want to work with, but it's easy to kind of miss that point. I know everybody's striving for this innovation and to continue to move forward and show how amazing their tech is, but if you do that at the expense of your legacy customers, that's not really fair. And the other thing is that the brands that we really believe in and trust, and I feel like are making the appropriate products to serve the market in a similar fashion, in a safe way, in a sustainable and a long-term supported way, also choose to work with Bosch. So it's kind of this cohesive system. And one of the things that a friend of mine told me years ago, where he's involved in the HVAC business, and he told me that in the early days of HVAC, there was around 30 plus brands. Now there's about 8. And I think that was an interesting point. I really took that to heart. He said, you should look at the industry right now and pick the ones that you think are going to be around 10 years from now. And that's who we choose to work with. And I think that that's important because I think that people want to know that long term they can get that support. It's not as simple as a traditional non-electric bike where you can throw any derailleur on there or whatever the case may be. If you need another motor or battery, it's not so easy just to swap those things out. And this is a very major decision that I've made with the business, fortunately with the support of my team. I think it just makes sense. I mean, I'm certainly interested to know what you guys think because it is really valuable to me. But overall, I mean, I really judge what we should do based on our customer satisfaction and really long-term customer satisfaction. Now, I'm not saying the other products on the market are bad. Really, in contrast, I think that most of them are pretty good. But another rule that I run my business by is this idea that in order to say yes to great things, you have to say no to good things. And we've said no to a lot of good products. Some of them we've tested and tried, but I feel today like Bosch is the greatest on the market. But if you think about it, it's totally within their wheelhouse. I mean, they had all the technology to develop an amazing e-bike system from the start. I mean, part of it, Bosch has been around over 100 years. They have competency in all these different areas that are particularly relevant to electric bikes, like batteries, for example. They took that from their power tools, which are recognized as pretty much a leader in the market in that specific sector. Then they took the motor from the automotive sector, which is another industry that they are a pretty heavy player in. That motor, I should note, was a design that was originated over 100 years ago, and it's seen consistent refinement since then. And then there's the other detail that probably most people are not too familiar with about Bosch, is how strong they are in the sensor technology. I mean, almost all cars use sensors by Bosch. More than half of cell phones use sensors by Bosch. You know, like when you turn your phone from one side to the other, that's a Bosch sensor. They also have sensors on crazy things like self-driving cars and the space station, where they actually use a very sensitive microphone paired with artificial intelligence, and they're able to determine if there's any issues with any of the machinery on board of the space station based on the sounds that they're hearing. And those sensors are really critical because after you have the hardware of like the best battery and the best motor and that sort of thing, it really comes down to the user experience. Like how easy is it to use? What's the experience? How intuitive is it? And I find that they really deliver in this area as well. Like most people, for the first time, they hop on this bike and it's really easy to use. And it's predictable, which results in a safer ride experience. And I think these details are important. Are there other motors that are perhaps more powerful? Sure. But do you really need that? I mean, if you could get up the biggest hills anywhere in the world, whether it's San Francisco or whatever, how much power do you actually need? If you can carry a bike with loads of kids, or you can carry cargo upwards of 400 pounds, do you need more power? I'm sure many companies will lead you to believe that you do, that you need more watts or whatever, but I don't know. I'm not saying they're perfect, I'm not saying we're perfect, but I really want to work with companies that are striving to do something better. I mean, that's why I'm in this business. I want to be thinking about more than just making a profit. I'm really fortunate to be in a business where I feel like we're able to create a positive change. I mean, I started this from the perspective of being a disabled war vet that hurt my back in Iraq, driving fuel trucks, which is really in a lot of ways like the antithesis of an electric bike salesperson. But I feel like this is my way of putting something positive out in the world. I feel like it's not always so easy to stop the negative, so instead, I'm just gonna focus on the positive. I feel like Bosch is in line with that. I mean, they're actually carbon neutral, which is pretty amazing. Now, my company is not carbon neutral. I wish that it was, and we're really striving to make improvements in that way. But it's pretty inspiring to have partners that are really rising to that next level and helping us to move to the next level. Now, I hope that this is making sense of why we made this choice, and you're maybe thinking of me a bit less like a crazy person, but if you still do, that's okay. But there's other details that I think are important as well that maybe are not always so recognized early on, like support is a really big one, where I feel really supported as a bike dealer, and my techs and salespeople are supported with many members from the Bosch team, like where they're able to provide support, training, and resources. That's a really big deal. Where a lot of other brands, I felt like we're kind of left just trying to figure it out on our own. And I don't think that's right. I think that there's a lot of other industries which are a bit more mature that are much further along in these regards. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I really want to encourage that higher standard. I want to encourage this system where people can get support wherever they are. Where they have a dealer network throughout the country. I think there's like over 4,000 dealers at this point. So actually, no matter where you are, you can actually go somewhere and get some support for your bike. Because maybe you moved from the place that you originally got your bike from. Probably the more common thing actually these days, a lot of people are buying their bike on the web and might not be so easy to get support. This is important. But I think overall what people want is something that's safe, it's reliable, it's easy to use, well supported, and the company that they're working with is responsible. They're making smart decisions. And Bosch kind of hits all those points. I found that most other companies kind of don't. It's really unfortunate, but that's the reality. Although I feel confident in this decision, it was not an easy one to make. And it is still pretty scary. But from my experience, making these hard decisions and really sticking to that 80-20 rule are the things that really move us forward in life. And I feel like this is the right way to go, but only time will tell. What do you think? How about this one? 20% of employees are responsible for 80% of the results. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right, we got about 10 people here. Who were the two?